What's up, everybody, and welcome back to Fireside Giants. I'm your host, Anthony Rivardo, joined by my co-host, Alex Wilson. Guys, it's like Christmas Eve tomorrow, the start of the legal tampering period in the NFL. Free agency is going to kick off tomorrow morning. You're going to have new signings, trades, a lot of stuff is going to come down in the NFL. So today we want to give you a little bit of a free agency primer, kind of preview all the moves that could be made, who the Giants could target, who they might be interested in, who they're already interested in according to certain reports. We're hearing some now interesting things about the running back position for the New York Giants, but we really just want to break down who's out there on the market, who's available, why they make sense for the Giants, why maybe they don't, all that stuff. Just give you that primer right ahead of free agency to help hype you guys up and get excited for the legal tampering period opening up on Monday morning. So we're going to go through, dive into all that, but before we do so, of course, make sure to leave a like if you enjoy, subscribe to the channel if you're new, ring the bell so you don't miss an episode, comment your thoughts down below. Make sure to follow us on all of our social media channels at Fireside Giants. Without further ado, Alex, how are you doing today, my friend? I know you're excited, getting ready for free agency. Let's hear. First off, what's that number one player? Who's that number one guy that you want the Giants to go ahead, take a look at, and hopefully pursue tomorrow?
Well, my friends, free agency is going to be very exciting, and it's going to give us a lot of information into what the Giants' draft plans are, right? If they invest a lot in the defensive line or the offensive line, or, if they sign a quarterback, we're going to get a lot of information that we'll start to digest and, try to read between the lines and give you guys all the information you need going into the draft. And this free agency class is deep at a lot of positions. Now, the obvious one that I'm going to point out right off the bat, Anthony, guy you're a big fan of, is Mike Onwenu. And Onwenu is a really good freaking player. And according to Jordan Ronan, I was just reading on Twitter, that he's looking for tackle money. And that's basically exactly what we estimated, right? He's a right tackle, but he can play left and right guard. So if you're the Giants, why does that provide you with so much value? Now, we just saw, whoever it was, Kevin Dotson sign a $16 million per season deal with the Rams. So Mike Onwenu's going to get $20+ million per season, most likely. He's a very good player. Now, a lot of people will say he's a Patriot. Don't want to spend that money on Patriot players, they're not very good. Guys, let's not be, concerned about the Nate Solder experiment. His situation was a little bit of a different ball game for us. Mike Onwenu was actually a great player, and he was great on a bad team last year. So, he can play through adversity, and God knows the Giants need players that can play through adversity. So when you're looking at Mike Onwenu, why does it offer you so much value to spend the money on a player like this? Well, think about what it does for Evan Neal, right? Right off the bat, Evan Neal is now forced to beat an above-average right tackle for the starting job. So Evan Neal basically says to himself, well, I got to start thinking about playing guard if I can't beat out this guy that they just signed to replace me. It kind of lights a spark under Evan Neal's butt, and I do think that's a very good thing for him to have some competition. The Giants have provided absolutely no competition at right tackle to compete with him for the last 2 years, which makes sense because they spent the 8th overall pick on him. But Mike Onwenu basically says to Evan Neal, I am coming for your job. I am being paid to steal your job. Evan Neal, play your butt off. Play better. Get better. That's basically what the Giants are telling him. Chances are he's not going to get that much better, and he's not going to beat Mike Onwenu for a starting right tackle job. But if he was to somehow take the biggest step forward ever, Mike Onwenu could transition to right guard and play it at a Pro Bowl level immediately. So now the Giants have a really great right tackle, a really great right guard, a young center, a superstar left tackle, and you figure it out at left guard with one of the guys you have. That's kind of the worst case scenario. The best case scenario, Mike Onwenu kicks ass at right tackle. They're like, yeah, there's no way we're moving this guy off of that position. And Evan Neal transitioned inside to guard, and they get maximum value from his frame. And, you try to get the most out of him there. You try to cross-train him. He can offer you a little bit of depth if Mike Onwenu were to go down. You can kick back out to right tackle, and you just try to get the maximum value you can out of Evan Neal, who's now a little bit injury-prone and struggling. He played through injury again last year, so a lot of people will give him a little bit of slack there. But, Anthony, Mike Onwenu, I think he's one of your top guys as well. Definitely is mine. The Giants are going to be interested. It really just comes down to price tag and the bidding war that will ensue for his signature.
Yeah, there's going to be a bidding war for sure. I mean, I think Mike Onwenu is going to have probably the most robust market of any of the offensive linemen, and it's because of what you just broke down there, and great breakdown kind of describing his versatility and the value that provides to an NFL offense. I mean, listen, with Evan Neal, of course you want him to pan out at right tackle, but if he doesn't, you move him into guard. But what if he does pan out at right tackle, and you just signed Mike Onwenu to all this money? He could still play guard for you. I love that versatility. I love that he has the ability to be a solid starter and a massive upgrade for the New York Giants at more than one position. It's very valuable. But again, other teams are going to look at it probably the same way, and they're going to want to pay Mike Onwenu quite a bit. So you talked about tackle money. I mean, this guy could actually get like $22 million per season, being one of the most expensive offensive linemen in the NFL at that point. So Onwenu not going to come cheap, but I love the way you broke it down, and we've talked about him quite a bit on this channel. Solid pass protector, good run blocker, versatile, everything that the New York Giants need. Plus, I think it's worth noting that he does have a connection to the Giants coaching staff. When Carmen Bricolo, before he was with the Las Vegas Raiders as their offensive line coach, he was with the New England Patriots, coached Mike Onwenu for the first 2 years of his career, then moved over to Las Vegas, and now is with the New York Giants as their offensive line coach. I think that connection is important. Onwenu can kind of look at the Giants as a potential landing spot, a team that wants to hand him a bunch of money, but is he familiar with anybody there? He is, and I think that's a very important thing to take note of. So Mike Onwenu, hopefully the Giants' top priority, top target in free agency. But let's move on to the other side of the ball, Alex. Obviously, still talking trenches. We know that the Giants need offensive linemen. They also need defensive linemen. How about pass rusher Danielle Hunter? We talked about him a little bit on the channel already too, so maybe don't want to spend too much time on him, but I do just want to keep reminding you guys he has a big connection to the Giants coaching staff as well. Andre Patterson, defensive line coach of the Giants, used to be the defensive line coach and co-defensive coordinator and assistant head coach for the Minnesota Vikings, somebody that those players hold in high regard. Danielle Hunter, no different. I think that he would love to reunite with Andre Patterson, but like Onwenu, not going to be cheap. Danielle Hunter, 29 years old, paying somebody like that $22 million to $25 million per season. Tough bridge to sell for some fans and some general managers, but Hunter is that damn good. I mean, he had 16 and a half sacks this past season. This would be the best pass rusher that the New York Giants have had in a very long time. Thinking back to probably Justin Tuck, Jason Pierre-Paul days, Olivier Vernon could never touch Danielle Hunter's level of sack supremacy. So I think that this guy would change the Giants defense, would be an absolute game breaker for them, and would be probably their highest impact signing, but again, at a very expensive price tag. Alex, in this primer, how are you feeling about Danielle Hunter now that we're finally a day away and the Giants are kind of sifting through their actual targets and potential options here in free agency? You still excited by the idea of Danielle Hunter? Do you feel like maybe that price tag is a little too high? And are there any other edge rushers at a cheaper price point that you might be more interested in?
Listen, if the Giants walked away with Danielle Hunter, would I be excited? Abso-freaking-lutely. This guy is a superstar pass rusher, good run defender, someone that has experience with Andre Patterson, a guy who helped develop him in Minnesota. The links and connections are there. But, I was seeing that he can make upwards of $24 to $27 million per season. The Giants, unfortunately, are not in a position to be spending $27 million on a pass rusher. The Texans are, right? The Texans are the team with a rookie contract at quarterback, and this is why people are begging the Giants to draft a quarterback, because they're never going to be able to sign a player like Danielle Hunter. Everybody wants him. Everybody wants a Bryce Huff, but the Giants are never going to be able to sign a player like this and actually compete unless they have a player at quarterback on a rookie deal. The Texans, they're like, yeah, let's pair Will Anderson with freaking Danielle Hunter. That sounds like a great plan. We can do it because we have the financial flexibility. The Bears will also have the financial flexibility to do something like that. So, you're looking at what actually sparks the capability to do stuff like that. The Giants are not in a spot to go out and get Hunter, despite the fact he would be a godsend for this defense. And we need to be spending every penny we have personally on the offensive line, and then everything left over goes towards everything else. That's kind of my take at this point, because it's been a freaking decade since we've had an above average line. Can we please have one in a decade? Like, I'm tired of being tortured by this team in that regard. But, looking at the other, pass rushers available, Danico Autry's a guy that you've listed in the past, someone that the Giants could consider at a much cheaper price point, a little bit older, coming from Tennessee. Guys like Zadarius Smith, older, from Cleveland, Leonard Floyd, Clavon Chason, Bud Dupree, Josh Uche. There's guys out there. They're not that great. These are specifically outside linebackers for what it's worth. Some of them are decent, veterans, but they certainly aren't coming off like elite seasons by any means. Leonard Floyd could be an interesting one coming from Buffalo this past year. But if you're looking for more like defensive ends, a little bit more versatility, obviously like Leonard Williams probably isn't coming back. Like Carl Lawson could be like a buy low option, like depth piece for the Giants, because he's coming off a really tough spell with the Jets. Yannick Ngakoue, guy that I really like, Jadeveon Clowney. That's someone I'd like to add to the Giants because he's older, not going to cost you a whole lot. He might be chasing a ring though, so no guarantee that the Giants could go after someone like that. But Clowney's going to be cheaper. He's coming off a really good season. I think that he would be a really good fit for this team in terms of helping support our pass rush hopes alongside, Kayvon Thibodeau. So, does anyone stand out to you that's like, yeah, like this makes sense for the Giants? Daniil Hunter certainly is expensive, but is there someone that's like, yeah, this is a good option, veteran, take the pressure off Kayvon Thibodeau, and the long-term expenditure isn't there. We can maybe go into next offseason, the season after that, with hopes of maybe getting a top dollar pass rusher when we're actually ready to compete.
Yeah, I'll list off three guys that I read the Giants are reportedly already interested in. First of all, AJ Epineza from the Buffalo Bills. He's only 25 years old, so he's also probably a cheaper option. I think that he's going to make somewhere in that like $7 million per year range. Like, he's not some absolute stud. He's still an up-and-coming player, probably needs more developing, but a guy that was obviously drafted by Joe Schoen. When Joe Schoen was in that building, they drafted Epineza, so I think that he could probably see the potential. He's a good pass rusher. He's still a good player. Like I said, he's only 25, so this would be more of a long-term option for the New York Giants. I think that AJ Epineza is a guy to keep an eye on because of his connection to Joe Schoen and Brian Daboll, and also because he's a good player, and probably not one of your 1,000 snaps per season. I think he's got a career high of 438 snaps in his career. So maybe more of a rotational guy, but again, nonetheless, a player with a connection to this regime and a good player as well who's young and still growing. I think that could be a very sneaky, nice signing for the New York Giants. That could be a player that you sign and you hope actually just takes a big step forward after you sign him. That's what I could see from AJ Epineza. So another player that the New York Giants are also reportedly interested in, Andrew Van Ginkel, Miami Dolphins. What I like about this guy, you kind of just mentioned versatility a second ago, Alex. Andrew Van Ginkel has versatility. He's played off-ball linebacker, so inside linebacker, he could fill in, and help with the kind of playing that enforcer role in the middle of the field. But he's also a really good pass rusher, had a breakout season in 2023, ended up with 6 sacks, 8 tackles for loss, but 53 total pressures, which is a big number. So I like Andrew Van Ginkel again as one of those cheaper options. He's 28, can be one of those guys that rotates in as a pass rusher with Azeez Ojulari, takes some pressure off his shoulders, takes a little pressure off Kayvon Thibodeau's shoulders as well, and moves around the defense, plays a few different roles in your defensive packages. And then you mentioned him, Leonard Floyd. I like the idea of Leonard Floyd. I think that, if you're looking at him as a short-term, one-year rental kind of player, someone who's coming in as a rotational guy, and again, just taking pressures off somebody's shoulder, I think that that's a good signing, but it's got to be for the cheap. I think there's a lot of risk involved with Leonard Floyd. I know that the Giants were interested in him last year. I know that they expressed some sort of interest because, again, the connection to the previous regime in Buffalo and obviously the New York Giants. So I like Leonard Floyd, another solid option. But really, Bryce Huff feels to me like he's already a New York Giant for some reason. This just feels like the exact signing that they want to make. I think that it's one of those deals that you could probably get on a 2 to 3 year, $16 to $18 million contract, which sounds like a lot, but for a player Bryce Huff's caliber and what you want him to be, it's probably a good bargain. My thing with Bryce Huff, though, and, if the Giants do end up signing him, I'm going to be excited but cautiously optimistic because he's very young. He's, about to be 26. So you see a lot of room for growth here, but he hasn't played a whole lot. There's not a lot of experience. 481 snaps this past season was a career high. Of course, he had 10 sacks, but he's also only playing as a pass rusher. Can he be an every down outside linebacker or defensive end for your team? I'm not so sure, and if you're not 100% sure of that, why pay him $16 to $18 million per season? So Bryce Huff is a player that I think the Giants are interested in and they are going to pursue. I'm a little cautiously optimistic with it, though. I think that there's a lot of risk involved with Bryce Huff. So those are the 4 guys I think that you could keep an eye on for the New York Giants as pass rushers, 5 if you want to include Daniil Hunter into that list. But Alex, flipping back over to the offensive line, there are a couple other guards that I want to bring up. We obviously dove pretty deep into Mike Onwenu, what he could bring to the Giants. Now I want to talk about Jonah Jackson, who the Giants are reportedly interested in, offensive lineman with the Detroit Lions. And I want to bring up one other guard who I think would be a huge splash option, Robert Hunt from the Miami Dolphins. I'll talk about Hunt first. I think Hunt is one of the best run-blocking offensive guards in the NFL. He would be an immediate upgrade at right guard for the New York Giants and probably give them the best run blocking that they've had outside of Andrew Thomas in the last 10 years on their offensive line. So I love Robert Hunt, but he's not going to get tackle money, but he will get paid like he's one of the best guards in football. So you are talking about probably $17 million per season for Robert Hunt. But again, would fix the Giants' offensive line, a big portion of it. Great pass protector, excellent run blocker. I think Robert Hunt's a big option. But then again, the Giants are interested in Jonah Jackson, one of those cheaper options, probably $10 million per year. Athletic guard who's done well with the Detroit Lions at left guard in recent seasons. Alex, those two guards right there, or maybe any other guards, how are you feeling about the Giants being in this interior offensive line market, and who do you think they should target?
I find it so funny, the irony of the Giants putting together like one of their better run blocking offensive lines and then letting Saquon leave the same offseason. Like, you know how like a much of a dick move that is? Like, excuse my language, but like 5 years have gone by. We've had horrendous offensive lines, and the year Saquon leaves, like, yeah, let's finally build a good one. You know what I mean? It's like, goodness gracious, like we really can't get it right ever, can we? But Robert Hunt is a damn good player, my friends. I mean, last year, 608 snaps. That was the lowest he's ever played in his career. He gave up 5 pressures. 5 freaking pressures in 608 snaps. And by the way, he has experience at right tackle, and he wasn't that bad at right tackle either in the past. So if you're the Giants and you don't get Mike Onwenu, is there a world where they bring in Robert Hunt to compete at right tackle with Evan Neal, and then in worst case, he slips back into right guard? There's a world where I think that might be a possibility. So, you know, I think that when you're looking at Robert Hunt, he's a big boy, 6'6", 335. I love the fact that he's only 27 years old. Really good run blocker coming from an offense that predominantly operated through the run game. David Chain and, you know, obviously Raheem Mostert, and, you know, there's such great success there. He'll bring a lot of experience and quality in that regard, knowing how to operate in a good run scheme. You know, and then obviously was not too shabby as a pass protector. As I mentioned, 5 pressures, gave up 1 sack, came against New England. I think that was actually the fewest snaps he played in any game, so it seems like he might have been injured that week. But, you know, he has 2 out of 4 seasons with over 1,100 snaps. This is a really good player, my friends. I think there's been a couple of people that have linked the Giants to Robert Hunt already, former second-round pick. I think that if you're the Giants and you can't get Onwenu, maybe you go out and get Jermaine Illuminor and Robert Hunt. Maybe that's something that you pivot to if you want to spend a little bit more money. But I think you're probably going either or in this scenario. I think Robert Hunt's probably the direction I'd go over Jermaine Illuminor for the simple fact that he can compete at right tackle with Evan Neal, kind of light a spark under him, as I said before with Onwenu, but also play right guard at a very, very high level. I wouldn't be opposed to, honestly, doing something like this, signing Illuminor and Robert Hunt, and then having Evan Neal work at left guard. That way you might be able to cover up some of his weaknesses because how good Andrew Thomas is on an island. You don't necessarily need Evan Neal to help him that much. You can kind of get his feet wet at left guard in that scenario. I know it's a big change of scenery for him. Really has never done that before, but at this point, we got to exercise all options here, and maybe that's the direction the Giants go. They just spend a lot on the offensive line and figure out the rest of the draft.
Yeah, I think that's probably their best route to take here is, spend big on offensive line. The Giants have drafted a bunch of young guys. I've been very clear on my stance with this. They got to give these guys time to develop. Guys like Josh Azidu, Marcus McKethan, Evan Neal as well. You don't know that these guys suck just yet. Yeah, they sucked in 2023 because the whole offensive line did, but these guys are still young, still developing. It takes a long time for offensive linemen to hit their stride and come into their own in the NFL. I think it's time for the Giants not to just keep adding young, inexperienced guys to this line, but go get some experience, get some proven veterans, and let those other young guys continue to develop. So I like Jonah Jackson for that reason as well. I think he's 27. Give him a 3-year deal. It expires when he's 30. He could be a plug-and-play guard as well. But obviously, if they're going to go and spend big money, I've been very clear for months now. I think even during the regular season, I was saying that the Giants need to go out there and try and get Robert Hunt. So if it comes down to it for me, if I'm the New York Giants and I can spend big money on one player, it comes down to Mike Onwenu and Robert Hunt. One of those two guys, whoever's willing to play here, whatever the price tags are, one of those two guys. And I really like the fact that you brought up Hunt's experience at right tackle. He's a tackle converted to guard, which should bode well, hopefully, for Evan Neal. Maybe he can learn a thing or two from Robert Hunt if the Giants were to sign him. And also, if the Giants need Hunt to kick out to tackle, he can do that as well. So really a top player on the free agency market that I don't think enough Giants fans have been keen in on. And I think that he would be just a tremendous grab for the Giants. But let's talk about the secondary, Alex. Of course, we know Xavier McKinney, Giants are still negotiating, still have to make a decision on him. I'm hoping I wake up tomorrow morning and Xavier McKinney is signed to the New York Giants, but I'm a dreamer, and that's probably not going to happen. But how about the cornerback market, Alex? Of course, I did yesterday's episode talking about Darius Williams, who the Giants are interviewing with today, I guess. Maybe they sign him today. Who knows? It's possible. Maybe they just interview him and keep in touch with him throughout free agency. I'll let you give your take on Williams, though, since you weren't able to make it on yesterday's episode. And then, are there any other defensive backs that might stand out to you as potential targets for the Giants?
Well, getting my take on Darius Williams, really solid player. I know he had, 15 pass breakups last year. He's 30 years old, right? So, this is my kind of overarching take on the cornerback situation at CB2. A lot of people are going to say, let's go get this young stud at 27 or 28 years old, a guy that's like a star alongside Deonte Banks. I mean, you don't need that, right? That's a luxury item to basically go get a CB1 to pair with your CB1. I think Darius Williams is a good option because it allows you to invest short term, not top dollar, and for a good player. He's a good CB2 for the Giants. That's kind of what I want to get across here. Looking at what the Giants actually kind of get from a Darius Williams acquisition. You allow Deonte Banks to be the top dog, keep facing off against top receivers, getting that experience under his belt, while having a proven veteran on the other side at 30 years old, who's probably going to get let's say a 2-year deal at maybe $22 million. Maybe he gets a 3-year deal, $33 million, with an out after the second season. All the dead money is front loaded, so that way you get out of the deal early. You don't have to get the older portion of Darius Williams, and you can groom some players behind the scenes to take over for him long term. So you don't have to invest a whole ton, and you get a good player. I think it would be a fine signing for the Giants, something that I would support for sure. When it comes to Xavier McKinney, I wrote this morning about Justin Simmons. And Justin Simmons, 30 years old, McKinney's 24. If the Giants are going to pivot from McKinney, because he has the same agent as Derwin James, who got $19 million per season, he probably wants realistically in the $18 million per season range. The Giants clearly are not willing to give that based on their actions. And you think about where they need to spend money. Obviously, offensive line, pass rush. There's plenty of places we can conjure up to spend. Maybe they decide, well, let's pivot to another good player. 2-time Pro Bowler in Justin Simmons, who obviously is a good free safety, can play in the box, can play in the slot. He's a versatile piece, just like Xavier McKinney. Again, you're getting an outside player compared to your homegrown talent, which is automatically a risk, and also 6 years older, which is also a risk. But the point being here is the Giants can say to themselves, instead of going young at cornerback, young at safety, we go a little bit older, cut the costs by about 40% of what a younger player would be to retain or sign in free agency. We cut the cost by 40%, take the combination of the safety and cornerback, that money you're saving. It could be the equivalent of, let's say, $8 to $10 million. Maybe that pays for Jermaine Illuminor right tackle. Maybe that helps pay for half of Bryce Huff. Maybe that helps pay for a running back and another tight end, or if Darren Waller leaves. You can just reallocate the money 100,000 times in different scenarios. But that's kind of my opinion in the sense that if the Giants are going to pivot, I'm not saying it's something that I prefer, but if they are going to do that, it does make logical sense to take the money from there. If we can save 40% here, save another 40% there, combine that money, what does that equate to? Does it equate to, a pass rusher, a portion of the contract? Does it equate to Jermaine Illuminor? Does it equate to a running back? Like I said, you can conjure up a ton of different free agency concepts to justify it. So, what are your thoughts on that concept?
I think it's an interesting one. Listen, I like the point that you made, though, about homegrown talent versus an outside source, right? At the safety position, and I don't want to continue to dive into the Xavier McKinney conversation. You all know where I stand. You all know how I feel. I want him re-signed. But I think that there is something worth noting here, which you're kind of alluding to. There are a lot of safeties out on the market. There are a lot of defensive backs, and so I go with the homegrown talent. I don't want to just go out there and try and replace a player that's good with a player that you don't know. Again, I think there's a lot to be said about the locker room and the person that you're signing, as well as the player. But Justin Simmons, an interesting option. The Kevin Byard, he was cut by the Philadelphia Eagles. He's obviously got a connection to this new coaching staff with Shane Bowen. Used to be a safety with the Tennessee Titans. Another player that I think makes sense for the Giants. And honestly, I think it makes sense for the Giants even if they do re-sign Xavier McKinney. I think Byard's contract is going to be affordable. So there are options out there. And regardless upgrading the secondary needs to be a priority for the Giants. And, what you're mentioning with Deonte Banks and helping him develop and having quality talent around him, super important because let's face it, guys, Adoree Jackson was not cutting it last year. Adoree Jackson looked like a ghost of his former self. Like he was a shell of his former self. He is not the option for the Giants. He's probably moving on in free agency, as I detailed in yesterday's episode. So now the Giants do need to fill that hole, though. They do need to kind of find someone to fill that void. So who is it as their outside starting cornerback? Do you believe in Trey Hawkins? I wouldn't bank on anybody on the Giants roster. I think it's sneaky. One of the biggest needs for the Giants going into this offseason is cornerback too. They really got to find somebody to stabilize that position. Whether you're talking about spending big in free agency or maybe drafting a cornerback way earlier than Giants fans are expecting. We don't see second round corners or anything in mock drafts really for the Giants. I wouldn't discount it. I think it's very possible it's a strong cornerback class. Once we get to the draft, if the Giants don't have that CB2 position filled out, I could totally see them going CB in the second round. So keep an eye on that one. Sean Murphy-Bunting, another cornerback, plays on the outside, solid athlete, player with a connection to the coaching staff. There's a lot of coaching staff connections that you can make for the Giants, but even outside of that, there are just good players available. If they want to sign a big name player, Kendall Fuller, he's 29, but he's still really good. Chidobe Awuzie, another player who's probably going to be more expensive, but it's still very good. And I like Kenny Moore a lot, Kenny Moore the second. Now, this is a player who is not an outside cornerback, so he doesn't fill that role for the New York Giants. But Kenny Moore is one of the best slot cornerbacks in the NFL, and I think that adding in a really good nickel corner into this defense could be tremendously valuable and something that's not talked about enough. But we'll see, because I know that the Giants do really like Cordell Flott, feel like he could be the starter there. But Kenny Moore is a player that, if you could sign him for an affordable price, I mean, I would love to bring a player like that in, a great run-defending cornerback who really adds a lot once you move into those extra defensive back packages. Another player that I think the Giants should really keep an eye on is Kenny Moore. So I want to talk about these running backs, though, Alex. I like the point that you brought up earlier with the Giants might have their best offensive line, run blocking wise, as soon as Saquon Barkley leaves, which does suck for him, but it does sound like he's probably going to leave. I saw today Chicago Bears are prepared to offer him a stupid amount of money. I saw Houston is still interested. I saw that Philadelphia is no longer interested, maybe. I'm not sure what's going on there, but whatever. Robust market for Saquon Barkley. We knew that was going to happen. Giants don't seem like they're going to be involved in that robust market. Seem like they're content letting him leave. But with the running back position, the Giants have started looking at other options. Now we've got Austin Eckler as a potential player that the Giants are interested in. Tony Pollard, another player that the Giants are potentially interested in, according to certain reports. So those guys could be solid options, maybe a little bit more expensive than we're hoping the Giants to go at the running back spot. But Alex, what are your thoughts on that? Who are some of these running backs that you're looking at, and are you interested in the Giants taking a look at guys like Eckler and Tony Pollard?
When it comes to the running back position for the Giants, I think that there's a couple different ways they should go, or could go rather. You look at free agency, and then you obviously look at the draft. Now, if you're going to go the free agent route, you can really let Saquon go and then go and get Eckler, go and get Tony Pollard. Pollard, I think, is an absolute pipe dream. Also has a couple injuries. I don't want to go down that road at all. You might as well bring Saquon back if you're going to go after Pollard. Eckler also extremely injury prone. Maybe you're going to give him a cheaper price point. I'd rather reset the entire position with a draft pick or supplement it with a draft pick and a cheaper free agent option. I like one of those two former Buffalo Bill running backs. I like Devin Singletary and I like Zach Moss. I would be totally open to taking in the third round like an Audric Estime or maybe even going after a Jalen Wright. If Trey Benson was there, I love Trey Benson. A lot of people love Blake Corum, who tested really poorly at the combine, but is just traditionally like a good back. Has a lot of miles on him, so probably not my preference there. But, Benson or Wright, Estime, obviously, like any of those three guys, take a shot on one of those and then pair him with like a Devin Singletary for a year. You know what I mean? You do a 2-year deal for Singletary out after the first season, maybe averaging $5 million per. Singletary can lead an offense by himself at the running back position if need be, but you can probably split up the workload, move on from him as after year one, and then let that rookie running back take over in year two. That's my preference. I don't want to overspend. If we're going to let Saquon go, we got to commit to that. You got to commit to getting cheaper at running back and not more expensive or more injury prone. I think you reset it entirely with a draft pick, maybe get a cheaper option in free agency who can lead the backfield if need be. I think you're probably in the same boat as I am with that one, right?
Yeah, I'm in the same boat as you. I think the Giants do need to get cheaper at running back. I think the two options that they're linked to right now are interesting because it's not all that much cheaper. I still think Tony Pollard's a good player who probably gets around $8 million per season. That's a guess. I'm not substantiating that number in any claim, but I think that he would get a solid amount of money still on the open market. Austin Eckler, I feel like, is kind of washed up at this point. I wouldn't be excited by that signing. I feel like he's a player that does come in a bit cheaper, but probably more overpriced than he should be because of his name. At one time, he was a really good player. He's been banged up a lot. That's not a guy that I consider a really solid or exciting option for the Giants. Pollard's exciting. I think Pollard would be great for this team, but again, you're talking about paying up a little bit and spending more money. I'd rather the Giants go after some cheaper targets, a Zach Moss, a DeAndre Swift, those guys who I understand you're paying half the price that you would be for Saquon Barkley, and you're getting half the player, but hopefully what the Giants can do, upgrade at offensive line, get a good run blocker in there like Robert Hunt, so it makes up the difference of losing Saquon, a great running back, and getting a more mediocre running back. I'm okay with that. But it does seem like the Giants are interested in still signing a guy who's looked at as more than just a mediocre running back. They're interested in Tony Pollard, I think, is really notable. The reported interest that they had in Josh Jacobs, which I thought was the most random report so far of this offseason, the fact that the Giants would be willing to move on from Saquon just to go after another expensive running back like Josh Jacobs, who you don't know and don't have any history with. That report really bewildered me. So we'll see what they decide to do. But it does sound like the Giants are more interested in getting an established solid player at running back than signing a cheap option. But I agree with you, Alex. The Giants should go ahead with a player who is affordable and they can afford. What's up?
Well, mid episode, of course, this happens. Kevin Byard is going to the Bears on a 2-year deal. So write him off.
There you go. Yep, write him off. I just mentioned him. Mentioned him a few minutes ago. Take him off the board. I thought that he made sense for the Giants because of his connection to the staff. But yeah, that's definitely notable. I'm curious to see, in these coming minutes, what the price tag for him was, because that's obviously huge for Xavier McKinney as these negotiations continue. What does a player like Kevin Byard get on the open market? So that'll be interesting. I'll definitely have some takeaways from that. But Alex, before we wrap this thing up, is there anyone else that you want to talk about? I know we've obviously talked about the quarterback position a disgusting amount. Like, I'm getting tired of talking about the quarterbacks for the Giants. Russell Wilson, obviously an option now. But are there any other backup level quarterbacks? I want to throw this name out there. I think I have once before on the podcast, but I want to do it again. I like Sam Darnold, man. I think Darnold is a good option for the Giants. I think he's still young. There's still something to unlock there. He just got a lot better playing in Kyle Shanahan's offense and playing behind Brock Purdy. I think there's a lot of upside with a player like Darnold. He could start for a while as a bridge. You got any thoughts on that, or maybe anyone else in free agency that you think the Giants should consider?
Well, I think there's levels to it, right? Like, if you're going for a player that could probably come in and give you Daniel Jones level production, you need to bring back Tyrod Taylor. That would probably make the most sense from a scheme perspective if you want someone that's going to know what you're already doing. Tyrod makes a lot of sense, might get a little bit more money, though. Sam Darnold, good player, probably can step in and operate. He did it with San Francisco, obviously not at the level that they were looking for, but he can get the job done if need be, and he's polarizing, sporadic. He's kind of not the player that you'd probably want starting, but that's why he's a backup at the end of the day. Jacoby Brissett, another guy I think Daniel Jeremiah said people were talking about him in like the $8 to $10 million range for a Brissett. Good player, can step in and start if need be. Drew Lock is like one of those gunslingers that you kind of give to Brian Dable and say like, good luck, buddy. Let's see if you can get any maximum value out of this guy. Not my favorite either, but Gardner Minshew, probably a little bit more expensive. He's probably the guy that can come in and win games immediately for you, but he's going to be more expensive. So that's the, the drop off there. The guy that I like, cheaper, he beat the crap out of us in the first half of one of our games this past season, is Joshua Dobbs. I don't think that Joshua Dobbs is this otherworldly quarterback, right? However, I do think that he's competent, and I do think that Joshua Dobbs can step in and supplement a Daniel Jones injury, or like he can run, he can throw, give him to Brian Dable, see if you can maximize his skill set. He's going to be really cheap. I think that maybe that's an option. What are your thoughts on a guy like Joshua Dobbs?
Joshua Dobbs would be really interesting, and again, I think that's a player with some solid upside. So the money just came in for Kevin Byard, 2 years, $15 million. I wanted to note that because I think him getting $7.5 million per year That's probably about what we expected for Kevin Byard. So maybe there's not going to be a super big shift to the safety market. Again, let's see how that affects Xavier McKinney and what his market is. But shifting back to Josh Dobbs, I think that could be a really intriguing option for the Giants if they want a guy with upside, somebody who probably isn't done growing, has shown that he can win games, but also is probably fine entering a situation where he knows a rookie is going to take over for him eventually. So Josh Dobbs, an interesting player. I like that. Good call out there, Alex. I think that's a intriguing choice for the Giants. Now, any other receivers maybe? We haven't really talked too much about the wide receivers this offseason. I know you kind of texted me the other day and had some interest in Calvin Ridley. I'm less interested in Calvin Ridley. I don't want the Giants to spend big in free agency at wide receiver just because of how good this draft class is. I'm more interested in guys who are on the lower end, like a KJ Osborne or, a Noah Brown, a Marquez Valdez-Scantling. I want to go cheap at wide receiver if the Giants are going to go wide receiver just because I feel like you could find someone in this draft class if you're a good talent evaluator. So, but any thoughts on that? I know, like I said, you mentioned Calvin Ridley to me recently. Do you still feel interested in that one, or maybe do you want to go in a different direction if you're the Giants?
I'm 100% in agreement with you in regard to using the draft this year to fill the receiver position. I mean, it is so deep, guys. There's so many. There's guys that are in the second round that'll be first round picks any other year. Guys like Xavier Legette, Lad McConkey, I think will go the first round, but still. Brian Thomas, there's a lot of great talent that should be first round picks, but because it's such a deep class, they'll be pushing the Giants to be able to capitalize with those second round picks if they don't go receiver at 6. Now, the reason why I'm not spending this year in free agency, Anthony, is none other than 2025 free agency class is ridiculous. It's insane. There's no reason to spend money right now at top dollar to pay up because the market's thin at receiver this offseason. Let me just give you an idea of what next year's free agency class looks like at receiver. Michael Pittman, T. Higgins, Keenan Allen, Mike Williams, Chris Godwin, Amari Cooper, Brandon Cooks, Deontay Johnson, DeAndre Hopkins, Hunter Renfrow, Michael Thomas, Robert Woods, Slayton will be, Jerry Jeudy, Nelson Aguilar, CeeDee Lamb, Justin Jefferson, Brandon Ayuk, Zach Pascal, Elijah Moore. I think he's very underutilized, good player. Tutu Atwell, Terrace Marshall, there's Nico Collins, Diami Brown. The list goes on. It keeps going. Amon-Ra St. Brown. Some, if not one of those guys, is going to hit free agency, right? Some of them will hit free agency. It's going to be a much deeper class. No reason to overspend right now on a Calvin Ridley when next year is going to be so much better. You have a strong draft class. If the Giants spend anything at receiver, they'd be absolutely ridiculous to do so because of that logic alone. That's my take. I like Calvin Ridley, but not this year.
Valid. I think that's a valid take. Next year's free agency class is loaded with wide receiver talent, and this year's draft class is loaded with wide receiver talent. So I'm not interested in going after a wide receiver in free agency this offseason. I think that's a position that the Giants can kind of avoid in free agency this year. I think the other spots that we mentioned, defensive line, offensive line, secondary, those are the spots that the Giants do need to focus in on. So I think before we round this out, Alex, let's have a little fun here. Let's do predictions. Let's, pick who we think the Giants are going to sign, maybe a few names. I'll start. I think lock in Jermaine Illuminor. I think Illuminor is a player that the Giants are going to target if they go cheap. Actually, you know what? Scratch that. I want to keep an eye on Illuminor. I think the Giants are going to make a splash on the offensive line. I think Joe Shane recognizes that he does need to pay up. So I'm going to say that either Robert Hunt or Mike Onwenu. Onwenu is going to be my final prediction. I actually think the Giants are going to land him. I think they're going to hand him a stupid amount of money, but it's going to be worth it. They have to do something about this offensive line. So I'm going to say Onwenu. I think Danico Autry as a pass rusher, and I think someone in the secondary, maybe it is Darius Williams to solidify that CB2 role. Those are going to be my 3 predictions for the Giants in free agency. And I think they bring back Xavier McKinney. Those are my 4 guys I think are getting signed tomorrow by the New York Giants. Onwenu, Autry, Darius Williams, and Xavier McKinney. Who are your targets? Who do you think that the Giants, any predictions for who they're going to sign?
I feel like they'll probably sign a lot less guys than we think, but even though I'll just give it a shot no matter what. I think we go Jermaine Illuminor, Jonah Jackson, Darius Williams, and Justin Simmons. Those are the 4 guys I have because I think that we utilize that older age gap to reduce the price, and that way we can sign two offensive linemen. It may not be like the perfect offseason, but locking down like a ton of money isn't my favorite thing. Now to adjust the the defensive line, I'll throw in Jadeveon Clowney. So yeah, you're spending money now which you have, but you're protecting yourself long term so you can keep building through the draft, keep trying to get that quarterback if you do manage to get one, and you don't end up compromising your future salary cap health because you have a lot of money tied up in long-term contracts, and if you need to reset again, you're kind of screwed. So I think the Giants go a little bit older, shorter term with some players, and then they go after a guy that has a lot of familiarity with their scheme. So I'll repeat, Jermaine Illuminor at right tackle, Jonah Jackson at left guard, Justin Simmons a little bit older, cheaper than McKinney, can play the versatile role at safety, Darius Williams, who's that CB2 that compare with Deonte Banks, good player. And then Jadeveon Clowney, who's coming off a really, really great season with Baltimore. True and tried, good run defender, great pass rusher, like just a veteran guy to help lead and usher Kayvon Thibodeau to that next tier. You know what I mean? Like, he's a good guy to have to help Kayvon. Tons of experience there. So that's kind of where I'd say my kind of opinion is lying, going a little bit more on the veteran side than investing in a lot of young talent that, ultimately we may not be able to capitalize on right now.
Sure, I think that's fair. I think the Giants are going to target a lot of veterans, but if they do decide to go after one young, long-term option in free agency, God damn it better be Xavier McKinney, baby. You better bring this man back. I'm going to keep pounding the table. I'm really hoping that he gets a deal done today or tomorrow with the New York Giants. One last name I'm going to throw out there just because I like controversy and I like to be yelled at in the comment section. Odell Beckham Jr., keep an eye on it. Maybe he wants to come back home. I know he's shown a lot of interest in playing for the New York Giants. I don't know if this is really the situation that he wants to walk into with so much uncertainty at quarterback. I think he wants a more stable environment. But OBJ, maybe he comes back. I don't know. I just wanted to throw it out there because I like, again, controversy. But it's going to be an interesting offseason, of course. Tomorrow, it's going to be a big day. You could probably expect 4 uploads from us on the channel tomorrow. I think that's like a safe bet. We're going to give you a breakdown on every single signing, like quick hitters. So stay tuned to that. Giants sign this player, boom. Episode out on Fireside Giants. Giants sign this player, boom. Stay tuned to it. It's going to be a lot of fun throughout this week as we break down all the signings, rumors, and everything surrounding the New York Giants and free agency right here on Fireside Giants. So make sure to leave a like if you enjoyed this episode. Subscribe to the channel if you're new. Ring the bell so you don't miss an episode. And comment your thoughts down below in the comment section. If you're listening to Apple or Spotify, please make sure to leave us a 5-star review. Go ahead and follow us on all our social media channels at Fireside Giants. But without further ado, we'll catch you on the next one. Have a good one. And let's go Giants.